When I first met Lisa, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of us. It was at a mutual friend's housewarming party, one of those lively gatherings where people spilled from the living room to the backyard, drinks in hand, laughter blending into the background. I had been mid-conversation with an old college friend when I noticed her, standing by the kitchen, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulder, eyes scanning the room as if she were taking everything in at once. There was something effortless about her, a quiet confidence that made her stand out without trying. I wasn't the type to believe in love at first sight, but Lisa made me question that. She carried herself with a mix of charm and mystery, the kind of woman who could make even the most mundane conversation feel like a secret worth uncovering. When we finally spoke, it was as if we had known each other for years. She had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, of pulling you into her world so completely that time seemed to slip away. Lisa worked in marketing, a field that suited her perfectly. She thrived on energy, on the rush of new ideas and fast-paced environments. She could talk to anyone, effortlessly shifting from one conversation to the next, always knowing exactly what to say. She was sharp, witty, and full of life, so different from me in so many ways. I was more reserved, methodical in the way I approached things. My job in IT consulting suited my personality well. I liked structure, problem-solving, the sense of control that came with my work. But Lisa had a way of pulling me out of that, of making me see the world through a different lens. Our first few months together were electric. Every moment felt new, filled with late-night talks and spontaneous adventures. Lisa loved to travel, and even in the early days of our relationship, she was always planning the next weekend getaway, a cabin in the mountains, a last-minute trip to the coast. She had an insatiable curiosity about life, always searching for the next thrill, the next experience. I, on the other hand, found comfort in routine, in knowing what came next. But with Lisa, unpredictability felt exciting rather than overwhelming. She had been married once before, something she was upfront about early on. Mark, her ex-husband, was a part of her past she spoke of with indifference, not bitterness, not regret, just a chapter that had already been closed. It wasn't right, she had told me once, shrugging it off as if it was as simple as that. We wanted different things. I never questioned it. I never felt like I had to. Lisa had chosen me, and that was all that mattered. As time passed, our relationship deepened. We moved in together, then married 2 years later in a small but elegant ceremony that perfectly captured who we were. Lisa's eye for details shining through every aspect of the day, my quiet appreciation making sure everything ran smoothly. Life with her was full of color, full of movement. She made the everyday feel like an adventure, like there was always something more waiting just around the corner. For years, I believed we were happy. I believed that our differences balanced us, that my steadiness grounded her, and her spontaneity brought me to life. Lisa was my partner, my best friend, the woman I had chosen to build my life with. And for a long time, that was enough. Or at least I thought it was. Married life with Lisa was everything I had imagined it would be, full of movement, laughter, and the kind of connection that made ordinary moments feel special. From the beginning, she had a way of turning even the most mundane parts of life into something exciting. A simple grocery run could become an impromptu cooking challenge. A lazy Sunday could transform into a road trip to a town we had never heard of. She thrived on spontaneity, and in the early years of our marriage I welcomed it. Our home reflected us, Lisa's flair for aesthetics combined with my preference for practicality. She had an eye for design, filling our space with pieces that told a story, that felt intentional rather than random. Our house was warm and inviting, always ready to host friends or family at a moment's notice. Lisa loved being surrounded by people. She could entertain effortlessly, slipping between conversations, making everyone feel welcome. I admired that about her, even if I didn't always share the same need for social interaction. I was content with our life together. My work as an IT consultant kept me busy, but I made sure never to neglect our marriage. I never wanted to be the kind of husband who got so caught up in work that he forgot to nurture his relationship. Lisa, with her marketing career, was just as ambitious as I was, but she had an ease about her, a way of balancing work and pleasure that I envied. She never let stress consume her. Even on her busiest days, she found time to unwind, to enjoy the moment. She was always chasing something, a new passion, a new challenge. It was one of the things I loved about her, but sometimes, it was exhausting trying to keep up. If I hesitated on something, she would call me too cautious, too predictable. "Live a little," she would say with a teasing smile, nudging me toward whatever adventure she had set her sights on next. And most of the time, I did. Because being with Lisa meant stepping outside of my comfort zone, and I wanted to be the kind of man who embraced that. Our relationship wasn't perfect, no marriage is. We had our share of disagreements, but we always found our way back to each other. Lisa had a stubborn streak, and when she believed in something, she held on to it with everything she had. I was more inclined to step back, to analyze, to make sure we weren't rushing into something without thinking it through. Sometimes, that difference led to friction. She would accuse me of overthinking, and I would counter that she acted on impulse too often. But in the end, we always met in the middle. At least I thought we did. Looking back, I wonder if I mistook compromise for control, if I let Lisa's whirlwind of energy pull me along without stopping to ask if we were moving in the right direction. I wonder if I should have questioned things more, if I should have noticed the signs. But at the time, I was happy. And I believed she was, too. Because why wouldn't she be? Our life was good. We had built something strong, something worth holding on to. And I was sure that nothing, not time, not distance, not the natural ebb and flow of marriage, could change that. But love isn't just about what you believe. It's about what's real. And reality has a way of creeping in when you least expect it. For years, I believed Lisa and I had the kind of marriage that could withstand anything. We had built a life together, full of shared memories, inside jokes, and the quiet certainty that we belonged to each other. But looking back, I can see the cracks that had begun forming beneath the surface, cracks I had been too blind or too unwilling to acknowledge. Lisa had always been restless, always seeking something just beyond her reach. In the early years of our marriage, I had admired that about her. It made life exciting, unpredictable. But as time passed, I started to realize that her search for the next thrill never really stopped. No matter how much we had, no matter how much I gave, it never seemed to be enough. It started subtly, in ways that were easy to dismiss. She became more absorbed in her work, her schedule filling up with networking events, client dinners, and weekend conferences. She had always been ambitious, but now it felt different. She was distracted, distant in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly between us started feeling scripted, forced. Like she was answering questions out of obligation rather than a genuine desire to share her world with me. I told myself it was just the natural ebb and flow of marriage. Every couple goes through phases, right? I didn't want to be the insecure husband who questioned his wife's every move, so I ignored the way her phone was always face down on the table. I told myself it was nothing when she started coming home later than usual, when her explanations seemed rushed, vague. "Just a work thing," she'd say with a quick kiss on the cheek, already moving past me before I could ask anything more. And then there were the changes in her appearance. Lisa had always taken care of herself, always dressed well, always put effort into looking good. But this was different. There was a new intensity to it, more frequent salon visits, more expensive clothes, an almost obsessive attention to detail. She looked incredible, but for the first time, I wondered if she was dressing up for someone other than herself. Other than me. Still, I said nothing. Because doubt is a dangerous thing in a marriage. Once it takes root, it grows, wrapping itself around every thought, every interaction, until you can't tell what's real and what's just your own paranoia. I buried my concerns, convincing myself that I was imagining things, that the distance between us was temporary. I told myself she was just going through a phase, that work had become more demanding, that maybe I needed to be more understanding. But deep down, something didn't feel right. And whether I was ready to admit it or not, I was beginning to realize that the woman I had married, the woman I had built my life around, was slipping away from me. I just didn't know why. Not yet. The moment everything changed was so ordinary that I almost missed it. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation or a sudden revelation. It was a simple moment, a shift so subtle that it could have gone unnoticed if I hadn't already started feeling that something was off. Lisa had always been good at covering her tracks. If there were signs before this, I either ignored them or convinced myself they didn't mean anything. But doubt had been creeping in, whispering in the back of my mind, making me see things I didn't want to acknowledge. It was a Saturday afternoon when I finally saw the first undeniable sign. Lisa had been getting ready to go out, nothing unusual. She often met up with her friends or attended networking events for work. I was in my home office when she walked in, dressed in a way that made my stomach twist. Lisa always looked good, but this was different. The dress was new, something I had never seen before, sleek, elegant, and just a little too perfect. Her hair had been freshly styled, her makeup flawless. She smelled expensive, like she had spent extra time choosing the right perfume. "Going out with the girls?" I asked casually, leaning back in my chair. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Yeah, just a little dinner," she said with a smile, slipping on her earrings. That hesitation, it was small, barely noticeable. But it was there. And once you start suspecting something, even the smallest cracks seem like gaping holes. I should have asked more questions. I should have insisted on knowing the details, but I didn't. Instead, I watched as she grabbed her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and walked out the door. It was an hour later when my phone buzzed. A message from Jake, my closest friend. "You busy? Need to talk." Something about it felt urgent, but I didn't think much of it at first. I called him back, expecting to talk about work or plans for the weekend. But the first thing he said knocked the breath out of me. "Listen, man, I don't know how to say this, but I just saw Lisa. She's not with her friends." My heart pounded in my chest. "What do you mean?" A heavy silence. Then, "She's with a guy. And not just any guy. It's Mark. Mark. Her ex-husband." It felt like my entire world tilted, like the ground beneath me had suddenly become unstable. I gripped the edge of my desk, struggling to process what I had just heard. Jake explained that he had been out at a restaurant with some coworkers when he spotted Lisa sitting in a secluded corner booth. She wasn't just talking to Mark, there was an intimacy between them, the kind that couldn't be mistaken for casual conversation. She was leaning in close, laughing at something he said, touching his arm in a way that made it clear this wasn't some innocent catch-up between old flames. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe that Jake had misunderstood what he saw. But deep down I knew. I knew. The signs had been there for months, the late nights, the secretive behavior, the distant looks. I had convinced myself that it was all in my head, that I was just being paranoid. But now, there was no denying it. Lisa wasn't just pulling away from me. She was running straight into the arms of the man she once swore was nothing more than a mistake of her past. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. Something had shifted between Lisa and me, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was like trying to hold onto water. Every time I thought I had a grip on it, it slipped through my fingers. She was still Lisa, still laughing, still charming, still the woman I had loved for years. But something about her was off. At first, I tried to ignore it. Marriage wasn't supposed to feel like a constant high. People changed, routines settled, excitement faded into something quieter. That's what I told myself, anyway. But it wasn't just the natural settling of time, this was something else. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Her schedule had become unpredictable. Late nights at work, sudden plans with friends, trips she never used to take. Whenever I asked about it, she had an answer, always delivered with that effortless confidence of hers. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? Still, small things gnawed at me. The way she no longer reached for my hand absent-mindedly like she used to. The way she seemed restless, like she was always somewhere else even when we were together. The way she hesitated when I asked about her day, as if sifting through what she could and couldn't say. One evening, I walked into the living room and found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The glow of the screen lit up her face, her expression unreadable. When she noticed me, she quickly tilted the phone away, locking it before setting it on the table. It was such a small action, something that could have meant nothing. But it made my stomach twist. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired," she said, stretching her arms and giving me a tired smile. "Work's been a lot lately." That was another thing, she had been mentioning work more than usual. It was always an excuse, always the reason she was exhausted, always why she didn't have time for this or that. I told myself I was overthinking it. But the unease never fully left me. Then there were the nights she came home smelling different, not like the perfume she always wore, but something else. A different cologne clinging to her clothes. I noticed it once and almost said something, but I stopped myself, because what would I even say? "You smell like someone else." It sounded insane. And yet, the thought lingered. I started paying attention more. Watching for patterns, for inconsistencies. The way she laughed a little too hard at messages she wouldn't let me see. The way she took longer getting ready for nights out, even when she swore it was just dinner with the girls. The way her phone seemed to never leave her side, as if it contained something too fragile to risk exposure. The logical part of me told me to let it go. The other part, the part that had been sitting with this quiet, growing anxiety, wasn't so sure. I didn't have proof. I didn't have anything concrete. But something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Not yet. The unease had become suffocating, wrapping itself around me in ways I couldn't escape. It was in the way Lisa moved through our home, in the way her eyes flickered with something unreadable when I asked about her day. It was in the laughter that no longer reached her eyes and in the casual, almost practiced way she answered my questions. I had spent weeks telling myself I was imagining things, convincing myself that every marriage had its ups and downs, that we were simply in a phase where life had pulled us in different directions. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something was shifting between us, something I couldn't explain but could feel in my bones. Lisa's schedule had become erratic. Work dinners, late-night meetings, spontaneous outings with friends, excuses that never used to be part of our routine had now become the norm. I had always trusted her, never had a reason to doubt, but now that trust felt misplaced. I started noticing the way she avoided specifics when I asked where she was going. The way she would glance at her phone, type out a quick message, and then tuck it away before I could see anything. She had always been open with her phone, leaving it on the counter or casually handing it to me when I needed to look something up. Now, it never left her side, never sat face up, never buzzed with the same frequency it once had. There were nights when she came home later than expected, her clothes smelling faintly of perfume, but not the one she normally wore. I noticed how she had started dressing differently, a little more effort in her appearance even when she claimed she was just grabbing drinks with coworkers. I tried to ignore it, to push aside the growing suspicions, but doubt had already made its home in my mind. It was there when I watched her get ready for another evening out, when I noticed how she lingered in front of the mirror just a little longer, when I saw the way she checked her reflection one last time before stepping out the door. The moment that shattered my fragile sense of denial came unexpectedly. Lisa had left for dinner with her friends, something she had mentioned offhandedly earlier in the day. I had spent the evening at home, trying to distract myself, but the nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. I found myself scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone when a message popped up in one of our group chats. It was from Michelle, one of Lisa's closest friends, inviting us to brunch the next morning. Without thinking, I responded, casually mentioning that Lisa was out with her that night, and hoping they wouldn't be too hungover to make it. The response came almost instantly, but instead of the usual playful teasing, Michelle's message made my stomach drop. "Oh? I didn't see her tonight. I thought she was with you." My entire body went cold. I reread the message, trying to convince myself that I had misunderstood, that maybe Lisa had gone out with a different group of friends, that there was some logical explanation. But the truth was staring me in the face, undeniable and suffocating. Lisa had lied. She had looked me in the eye, kissed me goodbye, and walked out the door with a story that wasn't true. My mind raced with questions, with possibilities I wasn't ready to confront. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, that this was some kind of miscommunication, but the weight of every strange moment, every distant glance, every late night crashed down on me all at once. I didn't respond to Michelle. Instead, I sat in silence, staring at the dark screen of my phone, my heart pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. I stayed like that for hours, unmoving, lost in thought, my mind replaying every interaction, every red flag I had ignored, every moment I had dismissed as nothing. The house was quiet, suffocatingly so, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a place I no longer recognized, a place where something had been broken, and I had been too blind to see it happening. Lisa came home just past midnight, moving through the house with the same ease she always had, as if nothing had changed. She set her purse down, stretched, and smiled at me, her expression as effortless as ever. "You're still up?" she asked, her tone light, unconcerned. I forced a smile, my hands clenched into fists beneath the table, my mind screaming at me to demand answers. But I wasn't ready, not yet. I needed time, needed to understand exactly what was happening before I let her know that I had started to see the cracks. "Yeah," I said, my voice even. "Just couldn't sleep." She leaned down, pressing a kiss to my forehead before heading to the bedroom, leaving me sitting there in the dim light of the kitchen, staring after her. I had always believed that if something was wrong in our marriage, I would know. That love meant never being blindsided, never being left in the dark. But I was starting to realize just how easy it was to be wrong. The days after Michelle's message felt like I was living in a fog, moving through my routine while my mind worked in overdrive. Lisa carried on as if nothing had changed, smiling, laughing, kissing me goodbye in the mornings before heading off to wherever she said she was going. But now, every touch felt foreign, every smile forced. I found myself watching her closely, analyzing her every move, looking for something, anything, that would confirm what my gut already knew. She had always been good at making people feel at ease, at slipping through conversations effortlessly, saying just enough to satisfy curiosity without ever revealing too much. But now I saw through it. I saw the little hesitations in her answers, the way she turned her phone away from me when a notification popped up, the way she seemed lighter when she was leaving the house and heavier when she returned. It was as if the version of Lisa that existed outside of our home was happier, more alive, and the version that came back to me was weighed down by the effort of keeping up the act. One night, I decided to test her. It was nothing major, just a simple question asked at the right moment. She had mentioned going out again, another casual dinner with friends, said with the same breezy tone she always used when she didn't want me to think too much about it. But this time, as she stood in front of the mirror fixing her earrings, I leaned against the doorway and said, "Oh, that's nice. Michelle told me you guys had fun the other night." She froze. It was only for a second, a brief pause before she smiled at me through the mirror, but it was enough. I saw the wheels turning in her head, the flicker of calculation before she answered. "Yeah, it was great. We didn't stay out too late, though." Liar. I nodded, pretending not to notice, pretending I still believed her, but inside, something cracked. That was all I needed to know. She wasn't just drifting away from me, she was actively keeping secrets. And secrets meant deception. That night, after she left, I sat alone in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the house settling around me. My mind wouldn't stop racing. I needed to know the truth. I needed more than gut feelings and vague suspicions. I needed proof. I started small, checking little details, testing her explanations. I asked questions that I already knew the answers to, just to see if she'd lie. And she did. Every single time. It was always something minor, where she had gone, who she had seen, why she was late, but they all added up to the same thing. Lisa wasn't just distracted. She wasn't just busy. She was lying to me. The more I paid attention, the clearer it became. She wasn't making mistakes, wasn't slipping up in obvious ways. She was careful. Too careful. Like someone who had done this before, like someone who knew exactly how much to say to keep me from looking deeper. But she had underestimated me. She had assumed I would never question her, never see through the gaps in her stories. I started tracking the little inconsistencies, filing them away in the back of my mind. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wasn't going to walk into a conversation where she could manipulate her way out of it. No, I needed something solid, something undeniable. And so I waited. And when the moment came, when the truth finally revealed itself, it wouldn't be because I had suspected it. It would be because I had seen it with my own eyes. The moment my phone buzzed, I had no idea my world was about to shatter. I picked it up, barely glancing at the screen, expecting something trivial. But the message from Jake stopped me cold. "Are you home?" Something about it felt off, like a warning before a storm. My fingers tightened around the phone as I typed back. "Yeah, why?" The reply came fast. "Call me. Now." A sick feeling settled in my gut as I dialed. The second Jake picked up, his voice was different, serious, heavy, like he didn't want to say what he had to say. "Man, I need to tell you something, and you're not gonna like it. Just say it." My voice was already sharp, my patience razor thin. Jake exhaled, almost like he was bracing himself. "I just saw Lisa. She's not at a work dinner. She's here, at the Oak, sitting in a corner booth with Mark." I went completely still. A second stretched into eternity. Mark. Her ex-husband. "Say that again," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Jake hesitated, but there was no escaping it. "Lisa is with Mark. And man, it's not some friendly meeting. I've been watching them for a while, and I swear to God, she looks at him the way she used to look at you." A sharp, burning heat exploded in my chest, searing through me like wildfire. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands clenched into fists, the phone pressed so tightly to my ear that my knuckles ached. Lisa. Sitting across from the man she had sworn was nothing but a mistake. Laughing. Smiling. Touching his arm. Pretending that I, the man she had vowed to love, didn't even exist. The betrayal hit like a hammer to my skull, ringing loud, shattering every illusion I had left. I had been patient. I had been understanding. I had doubted myself, questioned my own instincts, let her lies sink into my skin like poison. And all this time, she was out there with him, humiliating me, making me a fool. I shot up from my chair, pacing the room, my body rigid with fury. My mind flashed with images of them together, her lips close to his ear, her fingers tracing patterns on the table, her eyes alight with something she hadn't shown me in months. Jake was still talking, but I barely heard him. "I can stay if you want to come see for yourself, but I don't need to see it," I snarled, my voice thick with rage. "I already fucking know." I gritted my teeth, my breath coming out in sharp, uneven bursts. I wanted to hit something, to break something, to make her feel even a fraction of what I was feeling in this moment. The weight of it all crashed down at once. The months of lying, the empty excuses, the way she had been slipping away from me piece by piece while I just sat here, too blind to see what was right in front of me. But I wasn't blind anymore. She thought she could do this to me? Walk out that door with a fake smile, kiss me like I was nothing, and sit across from him as if I didn't exist? No. No, I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I forced myself to breathe, to think, even though my thoughts were spiraling into something dark and violent. Lisa had made her choice. She had decided that the life we built together meant nothing. That I meant nothing. Now it was my turn. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she felt it. I had never felt rage like this before. It wasn't the quick, fleeting kind of anger that burned out after a few deep breaths. This was something deeper, something raw and consuming, something that settled into my bones and made my hands shake with the need to do something. Lisa had betrayed me, humiliated me, made a fool of me in the worst way possible. And worst of all, she had smiled while doing it. I sat in our living room, staring at nothing, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. The thought of her sitting across from Mark, her ex-husband, laughing at whatever charming little thing he had to say, made my blood boil. I imagined her leaning in, her fingers grazing his wrist, her lips curling into that knowing smirk she used to give me. She wasn't just cheating. She was happy doing it. She had looked me in the eye, kissed me goodbye, and then walked straight into the arms of another man like I was nothing. I wasn't going to sit here and cry. I wasn't going to ask her why. I knew why. She had already made her choice. But now, I was going to make mine. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor, my breath coming out in ragged bursts. I moved through the house with one thought in my mind: Lisa was going to pay for this. I went to our bedroom first. The room where we had spent years together, where I had kissed her, held her, whispered promises I had meant with every piece of my soul. Now, those memories felt like a sick joke. I tore open the closet, grabbed her clothes by the handful, and yanked them off the hangers. Dresses, jackets, designer blouses she had spent hundreds on, every single one landed in a heap on the floor. I wasn't careful. I didn't care if the fabric ripped, if the seams tore. She had already torn apart something far more valuable. I moved to the dresser, throwing open drawers, grabbing whatever I could find: jewelry, lingerie, stupid little keepsakes she had held onto over the years. I scooped them up in my arms and dumped them onto the pile. I walked out to the garage, grabbed a trash bag, and started shoving everything inside. Her perfumes, her makeup, her hair products cluttering the bathroom sink, all of it went in. Every single thing that belonged to her, everything she had touched, everything that had once been ours was now garbage. By the time I was done, I was breathing hard, my muscles burning from the sheer force of my own rage. But I wasn't finished. I went to the front door, yanked it open, and dragged every single bag out onto the lawn. I didn't care that it was late. I didn't care if the neighbors saw. Let them see. Let the whole damn world see. Lisa wasn't coming home to a home. She was coming home to the consequences of her betrayal. I went back inside, my heart still pounding, my thoughts still racing. I grabbed my laptop, opened our bank account, and transferred half of our joint savings into my personal account. She wasn't getting another dime from me. Then I grabbed my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen for a second before I typed out the message. I know everything. Your shit is on the lawn. Don't bother coming inside. We're done. I hit send and threw my phone onto the table. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't care what she had to say. There was nothing left to say. Lisa had made her choice. Now she could live with it. I didn't have to wait long. Lisa pulled into the driveway less than 30 minutes after I sent the message. I knew the moment she saw it, the way her car came to an abrupt stop, headlights glaring against the pile of trash bags on the lawn. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching as she sat there for a moment, unmoving. Maybe she was trying to process what she was seeing. Maybe she was debating whether she should even step out of the car. But she had no choice. She got out slowly, her movements hesitant, like she already knew what was waiting for her inside. The second she walked up to the bags, I saw the realization hit her. She bent down, fingers sifting through the mess, and pulled out one of her dresses, the same one she had been wearing the night she told me she was just grabbing drinks with the girls. I felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just a deep, simmering satisfaction watching her take in what I had done. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, probably to call me, but she didn't have to. I was already opening the door. The second she saw me standing there, she froze. Her eyes met mine, wide, guilty, her mouth opening as if she had a rehearsed explanation ready. I stepped outside before she could speak. Don't, I said, my voice like stone. She flinched. Just let me. Don't. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The woman I had built a life with, The woman I had trusted beyond all reason was standing in front of me, looking small and pathetic in the glow of the porch light. I had spent months convincing myself that I was imagining things, that Lisa wasn't the type of person who would do this to me. But here she was, caught, exposed, unable to lie her way out of it this time. "I can explain," she finally said, her voice quiet, shaky. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that made her flinch again. "Explain what?" I gestured to the bags. "Explain why I spent years loving a woman who had no problem sneaking around behind my back? Explain why you smiled at me, kissed me goodbye, and then ran to him?" My voice rose, anger flooding through me again. "What exactly do you think you can explain, Lisa?" She took a step closer. "Please, just let me talk. It's not what you think." "Not what I think." I let out another bitter laugh. "Jake saw you? With him. He watched you lean in, touch him, laugh with him, like I was nothing. You were sitting there with your ex-husband while I was at home, wondering why my wife doesn't love me anymore." I took a deep breath, my fists clenching. "So tell me, Lisa. If it's not what I think, what is it?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time since I had met her, Lisa, the woman who always had an answer, who could talk her way out of anything, had nothing to say. I shook my head. "That's what I thought." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting to the house behind me, like she was expecting me to let her in. But she had lost that right the second she chose to betray me. I stepped aside, gesturing to the bags on the lawn. "Take your shit and go." Her breath hitched. "You're not even going to let me inside? You lost your way inside the second you let Mark put his hands on you," I said coldly. "You think you can come back here, cry a little, tell me you made a mistake, and everything will go back to normal?" I shook my head. "There's no normal anymore, Lisa. You destroyed that." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. She could cry all she wanted. She wasn't the one who had been blindsided. She wasn't the one who had to find out from his best friend that his marriage was a joke. She wasn't the one who had spent months doubting himself while she played house with another man. She tried one last time. "Please, I stepped back into the house and slammed the door in her face. I heard her muffled sob on the other side. But I didn't care. I wouldn't care. Lisa had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. The house felt different after I locked the door. It wasn't quiet, it was hollow, like the walls themselves had exhaled, like they had been waiting for me to see the truth, to do something about it. For months, I had ignored my instincts, convinced myself that Lisa was just going through a phase, that things would go back to normal if I just gave it time. But there was no going back. Lisa stood outside for a long time. I didn't look, didn't peek through the blinds to see if she was still crying, still hoping I'd change my mind. I just stood there in the middle of the house that no longer felt like home, staring at nothing, feeling nothing. Then, finally, I heard her car start. I waited until the sound of her engine faded into the distance before I moved. One by one, I went through the house, stripping it of anything that reminded me of her. The photos came off the walls, the framed memories that once meant everything, now nothing more than evidence of a lie. Every trace of her, her clothes, her jewelry, the stupid little notes she used to leave me, had already been thrown out onto the lawn, but it wasn't enough. I wanted her gone. Not just from my house. From my life. From my mind. I grabbed a trash bag and went through the bathroom, the bedroom, every space she had once occupied. Her perfume, her makeup, the books she never finished reading, all of it went into the bag. I wasn't going to let her linger here, not in any way. Then I grabbed my phone. I called my lawyer first. I didn't care if it was late. I left a message, making it clear, I wanted a divorce. Fast, clean, ruthless. Lisa wasn't getting a second chance. She wasn't getting anything. Next, I called the locksmith. By morning, she wouldn't even be able to step through the front door. Then I sat down, staring at my bank account, at the money Lisa wasn't going to touch ever again. I had already transferred my half. Now I planned to drain the joint account, leaving her with exactly what she had left me, nothing. By the time I was finished, the weight in my chest had started to lift. I wasn't happy. I wasn't at peace. But I was done, and that was enough. Lisa tried to call. Once. Twice. I let it ring. Then I blocked her number. I wasn't interested in her explanations, her excuses, her fake apologies. I had seen the truth with my own eyes. I had felt the humiliation, the betrayal, the rage. There was no fixing this. There was no repairing the damage. Lisa had walked out on our marriage long before I threw her out of the house. The only difference was, now she had to face the consequences. I went to bed alone that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house around me. And for the first time in months, I didn't wonder where Lisa was. I didn't care. She was in the past now. And I was finally free.